Good evening, everybody, and welcome. GT World Challenge Esports Europe Sprint Series continues here at the beautiful Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya for round 9 of what has been an incredible championship charge from all of our drivers in the European Sprint Series here in Sro Esports. For the adventures that are about to unfold today will be myself, Paul Jeffrey, and alongside me, sharing his words of wisdom as always, is the one, the only, Mr. Lewis McGlade.
Wow, hello, thank you. I mean, I'm not sure how wise they'll be today, but what a brilliant track to come to for our penultimate round of the European Sprint Series. It's going to be a pretty tough affair, of course. This is one of those circuits that normally people throw under the bus, courtesy of its racing qualities and open wheelers. But trust me, in GTs, this is a banger of a racetrack.
Yeah, it really is. Barcelona's one of those tracks, as you say, that often goes under the radar a little bit, I think, with our fans and with the drivers as well. But it always produces some great racing in GT cars. 4.65 kilometres in length. 16 turns, opened in 1991. It's been a mainstay on the Formula 1 calendar for many a year. And Lewis McGlade, in a GT3 car, there are more than one good overtaking opportunities here, aren't they?
Oh, so many. Of course, you've got the start-finish straight, which is about a kilometre long from start to finish. And bearing in mind, when you start going through the right-handers, because we don't do the chicane here, once you start going through those right-handers towards the end of that, you're turning right again, and then on this massive straight, you're building up your opportunity to go for a move for a mile. It is such a long stretch of building speed all the way back down into turn 1, but you've got all of those loops in the middle part of the lap where you can make overtaking happen. It does work in these cars, especially in the opening couple of laps of this race, where things are going to be quite crazy, remembering that we've got a 37, nearly 40 car grid here. Always when we go racing in GTs, it's just 10 drivers that score points.
Absolutely, and just going back to that, I think that is so tight in the championship and in qualification as well. And speaking of the championship standings, here we can see David Tanitsa for the Ferrari Driver Academy Esports team is our championship leader. 114 points, but a no score in the last 2 rounds has allowed McLaren Shadow's James Baldwin to close on 109 points. A ding-dong battle at the top of the field. Winner last time out, Nils Naujoks for BMW Sim Racing G2 Esports, has 77 on his name. Don't discount the BMW driver in the run-in to the end of this season. He's very much the man on form. Kevin Siggy for Team Redline is 4th in the championship standings, just a few points in arrears with 73 against his name, a further 4 points ahead at the second Ferrari Driver Academy team, driver of Giovanni Di Salvo. 5th position, 69 points. Josh Rogers, somebody we had pegged as a championship challenger at the start of the season, has dropped all the way down to 6th in the standings as VRS Co-Anda Sim Sport focus their attentions elsewhere than the European Sprint Series. Eamon Murphy, another driver to expect big things from Yas Heat McLaren, is 7th on the grid, just ahead of the second VRS Co-Anda car of Jeremy Butlew with 33 points, 8th in the championship standings. Artie Camera, the second of the 2 BMW drivers, having a difficult season but came good last time out with P2 in 9th position in the championship standings. Just ahead of another driver very much on form is Nicholas Hoburn for GTWR R8G Academy in the Audi R8 LMS GT3. Then we drop down into the second half of the top 20. Tobias Pfeffer and Dare McCormack are 11th and 12th. Williams Esports, McCormack, R8G for Tobias Pfeffer. Maciej Malinowski, Dennis Schoninger. Bastian Richter for the very popular Unicorns of Love, sporting the Aston Martin V8 GT3 Vantage. Nikodem Wisniewski in 16th position. Luca Lozio for the Janelisi Esports Academy with 10 points in P17. And Matthias Tiskovic for DV1 Triton Racing, 18th in one of the many Bentley Continental GT3s we see in this championship, just ahead of Sam Bagnall and Gregor Schill in 19th and 20th in the championship standings. And Lewis, as we get down into the smaller points paying positions, as you say, they're only the top 10 and you have to qualify to become part of this championship. So these drivers that we're looking at now, one good result can very quickly vault them very far up the championship standings, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, where it's obviously one of those typical things we bring up at this point in the championship. There are just 2 rounds left to go in this season. So for a lot of these drivers and teams, it's sort of now or never. They may not be focused on their championship position or anything major in that sense. They're just looking to prove themselves on a stage like this, where going up against proven drivers that we see week in, week out. This is their time to make a name for themselves and show some teams why they are the drivers on the grid that they are.
Yeah, of course. And as we said a little bit earlier in the show, anybody outside of the top 5 has to qualify through a hot lap competition to become part of the championship in the next round. That gives an opportunity for new names to come into this series. And you can see a few of the names, if we look at the entry list now, we've got quite a few drivers that are returning, such as the likes of Dennis Schoninger, Nicholas Hoburn, Andrea Capoccia, Manuel Rodriguez as well in the Bentley Continental. And then we have new drivers that we've not necessarily seen so much of in this championship and in esport racing in its entirety. And that is such a good opportunity, Lewis, isn't it, for these drivers to get themselves on, so to speak, the world stage in front of big audiences, in front of teams that can potentially offer these drivers a drive in their esport team, a paid professional drive. So not only do you want to score a good result, you're also you're putting yourself in a shop window, so to speak, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. All of these drivers, if there's some, it is the nature of sim racing as well, is that some of these drivers may well be potentially between drives or looking for another one, looking into the future, looking to make a step up in the sim racing world, that these are the times when they kind of make those steps. But to prove yourself in this, you have to be going up against the likes of, see on there, Niels Nyox, 2-time race winner this season. Of course, you've got 3-time race winner in the form of David Tinitza, and 2-time race winner in James Baldwin as well in this season alone. Plenty of big drivers across the name of sim racing, the likes of Kevin Siggy, who's won championships on goodness knows what, Nicholas Hillebrand, who just won the RCCO World X Championship in one of the rounds there at Indianapolis. These are all proven drivers across the entire world of sim racing. To prove yourself against these drivers, I mean, it is a mighty feat.
So, and also you need to look at the teams as well. Just on this last page alone, Williams Esport with Formula 1 affiliation, Team Fordzilla, again related to such a massive manufacturer, McLaren, Shadow, Unicorns of Love, that are huge and very popular in the world of sim racing. So not only are you going up against really talented drivers, you're going up against powerhouse teams as well that have got multiple professional people within that organisation helping to maximise as much as possible the ability for the drivers to go out there and perform at the very best. And that is an undertaking that really is quite the challenge if you're coming into this as maybe a young rookie team or even as a privateer entry, isn't it?
Yeah, like I say, they're the biggest team names. We've spoken of the drivers' teams as well. It's a shame for me. I mean, I do always like seeing teams taking on the likes of VRS Coanda. They joined us for the first few rounds, but as you alluded to a little bit earlier, their priorities have shifted ever so slightly, just focusing elsewhere in the sim racing world. They were challenging well in this sense. However, obviously through one thing and another, they weren't able to continue the challenge against Tinitza. David Tinitza's had his focus. We were speaking of this at the halfway point of the season, how his focus was going to change as the season's gone over into the other sides of the esports world. This is James Baldwin's opportunity to start challenging.
Yeah, it really is. And all these outside factors come into play for a perform. When the field is so competitive, when the amount of talent on show in each and every round of this sprint series and the endurance series and the other SRO sanctioned esport categories, when the talent level and skill level is so high, you have to be 100% bringing your A game to the racetrack every single time you go out there. And of course, the likes of David Tinitza, incredibly talented driver, but he's focusing in other championships, as you rightly say as well. That will take away a percentage of your focus, a percentage of your capacity and time that you've got to prepare, won't it? And that is, as you say, the likes of James Baldwin, who've got 100% laser focus on this championship. That has given him the opportunity from quite far back, fourth at one stage in the championship standings, to be right up there and fighting for that championship victory. And let's have a quick look at how these drivers qualified. Speaking of James Baldwin, he's our pole position man, just ahead of, there you have it, the Ferrari Driver Academy star David Tinitza, our two championship protagonists on the front row of the grid. Maciej Malinowski doing a great job in the number 992 Porsche to line up third on the grid and the second row, just ahead of another Porsche. That is Matthias Tauscher in the number 92 machine. So 2 Porsches on the second row of the grid. The second of the Ferrari Driver Academy 488 GT3s is Giovanni De Salvo, 5th in the championship standings, 5th on the grid for this race. He's got Eamon Murphy in the Yas Heat McLaren for company alongside him. Murphy will be very keen indeed to make inroads into those ahead of him in the championship over the course of the next 60 minutes and change. Dare McCormack having a strong qualification in the Williams Mercedes in 7th position. McCormack, another driver, very exciting to watch, well worth keeping an eye out for over the course of the race. Yuri Petrochenko in 8th position, just ahead of Sam Bagnall on the 5th row of the grid in P9, and Bagnall has that man Kevin Siggy in the Team Redline McLaren for company alongside him. Siggy has been a driver that has showed incredible pace over the course of the season, and expect him to move forward as the race progresses in the next 60 minutes or so. Andrea Capoccia lines up 11th in the number 94 Audi R8 LMS. Alongside him is Robbie Stapleford for Rocket Simsport, the number 81 McLaren there, looking resplendent in those beautiful Braun GP-esque colours. Alongside Stapleford, Nils Naujok's winner of the last 2 races, only 13th in qualification. Work to do for the BMW G2 Esports sim racing driver all the way down in P13, Luca Lozio for Jean Alesi Esports Academy alongside him. And there is Nils Naujok's teammate Artie Camera with a 5-second penalty carrying over for avoidable contact in qualification. So Artie Camera's day is about to get much more difficult indeed. Matteo Blotto in 16th position in a fast starting Ferrari alongside him. Expect the Jean Alesi Esports car to move forward as the race goes on. Charlie Crossland in a disappointed P17 for Team Fordzilla, and alongside him is Manuel Rodriguez in the big Bentley Continental GT3, 18th on the grid.
Yeah, and these drivers all from back here, especially around the circuit list, you'd think it's quite difficult to move up, but trust me, these drivers can get the work done. Mateusz Tuszkiewicz of DP1 Triton will line up in 19th position alongside Nick Hoban in the GTWR car, starting just inside the top 20. Then you've got Bonacorsi in that Lamborghini, very striking, cannot miss that, as well as the third and final G2 Esports car, that one piloted by Gregor Schill. Down the order, BMW seem to be struggling a little bit more today than they have done in previous rounds. They had a 1-2 not too long ago, looking slightly different, not inside the top 10 at all today, as we've got the BS competition of Angus Fender. Nicholas Hillebrand said he enjoyed going oval racing a couple of days ago, taking a victory over there. However, not looking super strong around here, just 24th, however, getting the most out of the Honda and the highest placed Honda NSX on the grid. Romanenko just behind that in 25th, with Gerardis on the right hand side of your screen in the Aston Martin, looking to move their way forward using some strategy to their advantage. It's always what you can do from back here on the grid, is try and work out when you're going to take that one pit stop. Rabiti on the left hand side of your screen in that GTWR car, and a fantastic livery for Olsen Forsberg there in the Honda NSX. Do like myself a bit of that, thank you very much. Attila Tench in the big red machine for BS competition on the left hand side of your shot. Not a great qualifying session from the Hungarian to be all the way down in 29th, and then rounding out the top 30 positions is Pit Kick in that Bentley Continental for Ballas Esports. Behind that, Nikola Latovsky in 31st position, with Chaldiakis in 32nd, Saknis in 33rd position, and Rachinov in 34th, seeing the final few drivers on the grid. The final 3 cars on the grid, Siamos, Geltsidis and Cantaneo, rounding out this 37 car grid, which I have no doubt, Paul, is going to be absolutely frantic around this Barcelona circuit.
Oh, absolutely. Again, a great list of drivers on the grid. Qualification was ridiculously tight throughout the field, so there really is no standout favourite. Just to give you a kind of an idea of how close qualifying was, the top 15 separated by 4.5 tenths of a second. Around a track like Barcelona, with there's so many technical corners, with so many significant acceleration and deceleration points, that is a very small gap indeed. But James Baldwin will hope against hope that he can get the clean start, can get an early race lead. Because, Lewis, that's going to be key, I think, here on this track, isn't it? Is fresh air in front of your car, not getting stuck behind somebody dictating your own pace.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is slipstream around here. I say normally when we go racing here in certain open wheelers and stuff, you think it's actually really, really difficult to overtake. It's still a hard track to overtake on. I'm not saying it is easy, but when you're running those faster final corners, especially in cars like this with dirty air, where it's not as effective as it is elsewhere in motorsport and stuff, you can make good runs down into turn one or even on the backstretch, because the straights are so long. You're building up so much slipstream. You're punching such a big hole in the air that sometimes being out front, you may see that quite a lot of overtakes around here. I'm not trying to big it up unnecessarily. We don't really know. The gaps being closed, by the way, this comes down to a fact of this race circuit, as you said, has been around since 1991. It was built actually in conjunction with a large amount of venues in Barcelona for the 1992 Olympic Games. And it's a circuit that's been a staple of motorsport for that 30-year run. And with that, as much as we've seen it in motorsport be used by all these drivers, in sim racing, they're so aware of this circuit. They've done so many laps of circuits like this that it's almost second nature.
Yeah. And then throw into the mix as well that drivers at this level, the amount of practice that they will put in to an event such as this is just beyond comprehension for us mere mortals. There will be so much data, so much time spent practicing with a teammate, practicing with a driver coach, looking what the ideal lines are, the ideal setups, where you can gain an advantage, where looks like a good place to overtake, how the car's going to behave on low fuel, on worn tyres, in dirty air. What will happen if plan A goes wrong? Will plan B kick in? Plan C? Plan D? It's an entire industry as a team, isn't it, Lewis? That it's not just a case of turn up 10 minutes before, put some practice in and go racing. This is a massive undertaking for each and every one of these stars on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. They've put in an awful lot of work, and then it all comes down to 60 minutes of racing, which we'll get onto now. They're run down into the chicane. I thought we were running the fastest chicane, but no, we are running down into the chicane and then onto the start-finish straight. This is going to be pretty intense.
Yep, this is going to be fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, the 9th of 10 rounds of the European Sprint Series in the SRO Esports GT3 Championship is about to kick off. James Baldwin, you can see picture in picture in the blue McLaren, is our pole position sitter. David Tanitsa is the championship leader alongside him, and we'll be looking to see what he can do to wrestle away the race lead. The lights are about to go green. We're about to start the 9th round of the SRO Esports European Sprint Series here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. Good start from James Baldwin. The two Porsches now fanning out either side of a Ferrari for the run down into T1. Tanitsa will be on tender hooks to avoid contact in the opening few corners of the race, which he just about manages to do. Giovanni Di Salvo facing the wrong direction. He's collected a couple of cars for good measure as well. David Tanitsa drops down into third position. Malinowski takes away that place into P2, but James Baldwin at the front of the field, that is exactly what he needed, and David Tanitsa now is the man that's got to charge forward.
Yeah, absolutely. With Malinowski making that start, the two Porsches made a little bit of progress, and it nearly could have got a bit worse for Tanitsa, to be perfectly honest. There's Gregor Schill, who's been backwards down at turn 2 to join the sort of mask of cars that we saw, including, of course, De Salvo. There was a bit of contact between De Salvo, between Tauscher, and of course it was Eamon Murphy, all sort of in the middle, and they all kind of came together and then went off. I think Eamon Murphy's had another moment at some point, because he wasn't that far off this loop, and he's now dropped way off.
Yep, those Ferraris have been magnetic in the opening laps for these last few races, but David Tanitsa, the championship leader, the man that the Scuderia's hopes rest upon for this championship predominantly in the 9th round of the season, has managed to survive. He's dropped one position, but at this stage in the race, that is not a disaster. Tanitsa now, though, needs to make light work of Malinowski. He needs to get past that Porsche as soon as he possibly can, because he cannot afford for James Baldwin to get any sort of advantage, and this is the long start-finish straight that Lewis McGlade was speaking about at the top of the show. A good run through the final turn there for Tanitsa. Now uses the slipstream to good effect. Malinowski goes to the inside to defend, as is his right. Coming down into the first corner, is there enough horsepower in that Ferrari 488 for Tanitsa to get ahead? Yes, there is. Signed, sealed and delivered all the way into the first braking zone for T1. David Tanitsa back up in a second with a very clean overtaking manoeuvre.
Yeah, Bagnall also having the same kind of issues whilst he's trying to defend from Kevin Siggy and Arthur Camera. The Porsche, it's had a little bit more ballast than some of the other cars, and it is just a bit slower in a straight line. It doesn't really have the power in the corners. Great, perfect, but it's just not got that grunt that you're going to need to take on things like the Ferraris, as we'll see these two battle it out. Niels Nyox trying to gain the position on Charlie Crossland, and does indeed do so. So Crossland down one, and you can see Nico Hillebrand in 15th position. Superb start up into 15th place. Brilliant stuff from the HPD Jaspro Europe team. Really good progress indeed. At the front though, obviously with it being points, I know it's obviously very early days, but if they're to finish in this current position, it's an 8-point swing, that being 5 points between them would mean, at least by my maths, that James Baldwin would lead the championship by 3 points going into the last race. Of course, very early doors to be talking about that.
Yeah, it's a brave man that predicts championships with 56 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, you've got to have some fun.
Well, you've got to do, I suppose. You've got to get these things going, haven't you? But he is a man that's made a good start. Had a little bit of a delayed start off the line, but recovering nicely is now Yox. 13th position he's managed to get back into again with that pass on... I believe that was, who's he passing? Charlie Crossland, just a few corners ago. Looking at Romanenko now, all the way down into 17th position for the number 48 Ballas Esports Lamborghini. A car that's not been particularly competitive throughout the course of the season. It looks and it sounds absolutely spectacular, but the Lamborghini just doesn't have the lap time of some of his rivals. We're about to see in the most clear way possible Romanenko under pressure for the run down into T1. Somebody coming out of pit lane as well. That might just save the bacon of Konstantin Romanenko in the Team Ballas Esports car, and it does. He holds on for a few more corners at least as Rabate tries to find a way past in 18th.
Yeah, already a bit of lap traffic. I think it might be Gregor Schill. Obviously had issues in the opening lap, pit kick as well, along with DeSalvo. All these cars have had issues in the opening laps of drop way back. I mean, we saw some of the instances. There were some pretty heavy hits back there, and it's no surprise they'll require to make an early pit stop. And for those of you maybe new to this, obviously you can see that there's an orange number with a 1 in it that you can see about the requirement of pit stop. This does not tick off their required pit stop. It needs to be in the middle point of the race. Just going to say for Simone Rabiti there, that looks somewhat comfortable. Looks like he's about to go on a flight.
Yeah, that one looks mighty uncomfortable if you ask me. That would do my head in with about 3 laps. But Rabiti doing what he needs to do to try and find himself an advantage, because we've said this before, Lewis, haven't we? Especially in the longer endurance races, the more comfortable, the more confident you can be behind the wheel, the more you can extract the performance from the car. And if that works for him, then that will give him that confidence that he's going to be comfortable for the duration of the race and can push himself to the absolute limit if necessary.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, there might be something else. Oh, look at this though, as Eamon Murphy and Robbie Stapleford are going to go side by side out of the chicane, and Robbie Stapleford moves up inside the top 10. Look at this from Nick Hoban though, who's also going to get involved in the mix in the Audi R8, nearly getting alongside. He is slightly there with Eamon Murphy, who's just dropping backwards. Robbie Stapleford's held this, is going to hold the inside line and into T1. Look at how wide Eamon Murphy's going, trying to hook it in, a little bit of contact with Stapleford, and he spins Stapleford out and drops him into the gravel trap, and Nick Hoban picks up both of them.
Yeah, that was messy from Stapleford and Murphy. Hoban could see that coming in advance, just hung back a little bit and then went through the open door. Nils Naujoks, ever the wily racer for BMW, trying to find a vantage where that little situation has kicked off as well. Further down the order, this is Malinowski now, 5th position, alongside Dare McCormack, 4th and 5th position, being fought over here. Maciej Malinowski is currently the man at the head of that pile in the Porsche. There you see him, the Sparco sponsored machine for Random Pasta Bowl. The number 992, Dare McCormack in the Mercedes, keen, incredibly keen to try and find a way past. He wants that 4th position, he wants to get after Tauscher ahead as well, but not to worry. Petrochenko and Bagnall and Siggy and Camera are all interested in this fight as well, and we've seen this, haven't we, Lewis, so many times. You can be fighting, defending, trying to overtake, you make one mistake, one half measure move, and suddenly there's 5 or 6 cars that are going to jump into the space that you've just given them. So you've got to be keen, you've got to be very aggressive with your overtake. More important than not, you've got to be confident that you can achieve it before setting out to start the manoeuvre.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Eamon Murphy was thinking that too much down at T1. Did kind of leave it down the inside a little bit, like there was no overlap there. I mean, obviously it is what it is. We'd have to take another look at that at some point. But McCormack here we're on board with. Moved up into 5th position from 7th, I believe it was. So a little bit of progress now, trying to get by Malinovsky. As there's a bit of action in the background as well. That was a bit crazy from McCormack. But look at this from Bagnall and Siggy, as Bagnall just trying to hang on still, just trying to keep Siggy at bay. And 7th position still stays the way of the Porsche. The McLaren not quite fast enough to drag clear of that bright green car just yet. But Siggy's pace, I mean, he's quick enough to get by, and the McLaren's plenty fast enough. You can tell that to James Baldwin right now. Siggy's just not able to make the same sort of progress.
And this is exactly what we're speaking about there. Dan McCormack having a bit of an adventure around the outside light contact. That now puts him under pressure from not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 cars behind, as we see once again Kevin Siggy looking to the inside of the Porsche ahead of him. Not enough room, nowhere to find a way past in the team Redline machine, but Siggy is a man on a charge. He's got all the hallmarks of somebody that will be moving forward sooner rather than later. The first person under attack is that man in the green Porsche, Sam Bagnall, with Yuri Petrochenko desperately trying to find a way past Dan McCormack as well. He wants to clear McCormack and the chasing pack behind him as soon as possible in order to give himself a little bit of breathing room. 51 minutes, 33 seconds left on the clock. A mandatory pit stop still to go as well, so there's plenty of racing left to go. And so far, Lewis, we predicted good racing and we've seen it all throughout the field.
Yeah, I will say with McCormack, I think I'm not necessarily sure that Petrochenko is actually like fast enough in comparison. We'll have a take a look at the race starts. This is in the mid-pack, so you can see Eamon Murphy there on the left. On the right-hand side, and the Ferrari there was De Salvo. Keep your eye on De Salvo, who's in the middle of the track. So Eamon Murphy's just there. There's a little bit of 3 wide as they're trying to work their way through, and Eamon Murphy just trying to keep off the side of the Unicorns of Love Porsche, then spins out De Salvo, who spins out pretty much the entirety of the grid. You can see Attila Dench in there, as well as pretty much everyone else. So clearly not the greatest start to a race. A little bit claustrophobic because it wasn't there. Gregor Schill saw him off there in the barrier. Not ideal how you want to start the race. It's kind of one of those things where it happens so far up the front that everyone behind just gets involved.
Yeah, so unfortunate for Giovanni De Salvo. 3 wide just does not go into that section of racetrack. And I hope for the Italian's sake that he's not having a direct drive wheel, because that would have come keen indeed. Multiple contacts with the remainder of the grid. Sam Bagnall, 7th position, that we're looking at now, starting to become a little bit detached from Yuri Petrochenko. So Bagnall now very much concentrating on what's happening behind him rather than what's happening in front. And speaking of in front, David Tanitsa has closed down that race lead to 8.5 tenths of a second as Nicholas Hoburn now to the side. We've got a car going in the wrong direction. Eamon Murphy made contact at the start of the race and now has had contact done to him. And Eamon Murphy, everybody goes past that. He's soul destroying for a driver. You're waiting for a gap in the traffic, and all of a sudden you've gone from almost in touching distance of the top 10 to well outside of the top 20.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal, this kind of grid where you've got only 10 drivers scoring points, and like I say, was in a mix for it, but I mean, could have been in the mix for slightly more today, could Eamon Murphy, but obviously some things have gone wrong. We'll take a look at Eamon Murphy. This is a move with Stapleford, so we'll keep focused on this. So was diving down the inside, I believe that was of Niels Nyok, so a little bit of contact there. That was how Robbie Stapleford got down the inside and then got that position done. Excellent driving from Robbie Stapleford, the young man, to sneak his way through. And you can see there Nick Hoburn going through. But I need to take a look again at this, Paul, because I don't know about you. I do think that Eamon Murphy's kind of there when he wasn't there.
Yeah, that is eyes closed driving, to say the least, trying to get out of the way. And sadly, I like Eamon Murphy. I'm a big fan of him as a driver, but I'm afraid he put a car where a car should not have been. And there's only ever going to be one outcome on that one, Lewis, and that one's on Eamon Murphy, I'm afraid. But he's paid some price for a further incident later in the race, so Murphy's got a lot of work to do, and no doubt our live stewards that are present at each and every one of these SRO eSport competitions will be reviewing that incident and the later one as well from many different angles. Oh yes, I wouldn't want to be them.
No,
good on them for doing it though. Big shout out, by the way, to our stewards, the unsung heroes in these many, seemingly hundreds races that we've run this season, really working hard to keep the driving standards high.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, when it comes to a first lap like that, they will throw the rule back at them just to be like, right, let's sort them all out. I'm not sure about the move there. I think Niels Nyox might have just overdone it going down into the hairpin there, and that was what clouted Eamon Murphy. We only caught it out of the corner of our eye, but you can see here, as you were saying earlier, the lead battle is coming down. James Baldwin did have a decent lead at one point. I mean, it was out to around about 1.5 seconds. It is closing down and down and down. And David Tanitsa, he's charging. These two are not just battling for the race victory here, though. They are battling for the championship.
They are indeed. Now, this is riding on board with Niels Nyox. That is Eamon Murphy that we see ahead of us in the Yas Heat McLaren. Murphy, embroiled in his own battle, goes to the outside. It's an awfully awkward corner. Nyox puts the car down the inside. Murphy does not recognise what is happening, and Niels Nyox is the person that uses the big BMW, and that's a substantial car in its own right, to spin the McLaren 720S around, and Eamon Murphy would not have known what hit him in that incident.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of one of those ones where I'd want to watch it on board all the way through, because I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say whose fault, because it's not my decision. That's what the race stewards are here for. But I did get the vibe there that Niels Nyox was going to pull it up for the apex. Now, you can read into that what you will, but it did look like he didn't actually miss his braking point, making contact with Eamon Murphy. So that, I think it comes down to a little bit of it being an awkward corner, contact between them. Obviously, that's where you can pull out all these different camera angles when you're in race control and really pick apart an incident to its fullest extent. And here we're a bit more like, kind of, we see what we see. But I'm not so sure about this one now, seeing it from that onboard bit, because it does look like Niels Nyox held it up nicely. Let's take a look once more. Dives to the inside.
It was a long way back, but I don't think Murphy recognised the fact that BMW was going to be on his inside and closed down a door that was open when Nyox started the manoeuvre. And as you say, Lewis, that's a difficult corner at the best of times. It's an awkward corner here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, and often catches drivers out. But I agree with you, it was a long way back, but Nyox looked very much like a man who had the car under control and could certainly easily make the corner. Murphy artificially wide, I think, on corner entry as well. There we go. Look, Nyox looks down the inside. When he's down the inside, Eamon Murphy crucially starts to turn in. So Nyox has already signals his intent before Murphy closes the door, and I think that's going to be the slam dunker.
I know a lot of people would probably kind of draw a similarity between that incident and the Stapleford-Murphy one, obviously the other way around, with Murphy being on one side of it and the other, but they're certainly not even remotely the same incident. It's wildly different. That is a very hard one to pick apart, and I'm sure Race Control will pick it apart in the fairest way possible. I'm kind of in the boat of, actually looking at it from that angle, that Nyox has kind of made his commitment. He said, this is what I'm doing, and then it's about what Murphy does past that point. Not saying that Murphy needs to just jump out of the way, but there is you've got your due diligence to do around that kind of move. But it is what it is. Focused back on Niels Nyox, who's just on the cusp of the top 10 on the rear end of Nick Hoban. Down the inside, BMW seems pretty good on its brakes as he gets inside the top 10, at least for now.
A lovely overtaking manoeuvre from Nyox there. Very much looks like a man who's motivated to get a good result here today. As we say, won the last two races. The BMW not quite as competitive here at Barcelona as it's been in previous rounds, but Nyox never ever underestimate Niels Nyox. He's got the bit firmly between the teeth. He wants points, but he wants as many points as he possibly can, just to keep himself, at the very least, in the conversation for the championship battle. I do fear that Baldwin and Tanitsa are going to be a bridge too far away now, being currently in positions 1 and 2. James Baldwin, race leader, David Tanitsa, the challenger, in second place. But the more points that Nyox can get, the better his chances of staying in the top 3 come season end. And look at David Tanitsa, emboldened by the overtaking manoeuvre he made earlier in the race, confident now in the Ferrari underneath him. David Tanitsa is on a charge.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely needs it after the last couple of rounds. Remember, with Tanitsa, I said before, a 3-time race winner. These two have 5 race wins between them, so half of the complete season goes to these two drivers, at least to some degree. So their championship fight is intense as Tanitsa's not scored points in the last 2 races. But let's take a look at all of this. A bit of 3 wide in the middle of this as Kapoccia was trying to find his way through, as we're re-watching some of this. Eamon Murphy picking up some positions, and now inside the top 20. Matteo Blotto's dropped back, was 19th, obviously now drops back to 21st as a little bit of progress coming the way of Eamon Murphy to now get inside that top 20. But a bit crazy. I said, any corner's an overtaking opportunity around Barcelona, certainly in GTs.
Absolutely, 3 wide goes to show perfectly just how much you can pass here at Barcelona, and Matteo Blotto now dropping down into 21st position. Eamon Murphy making up 2 places after the bit of drama that he had to unfold a couple of laps ago. Let's ride on board now. David Tonitza, 2nd position, trying to get a run on the McLaren of James Baldwin ahead. The Ferrari doesn't quite have enough horsepower in a straight line. Even with the benefit of the slipstream, he cannot close onto the back of that number 28 machine. That's going to be bad news for Ferrari, bad news for David Tonitza. If you've got a speed advantage in a straight line, you've got a good opportunity. Meanwhile, Sam Bagnall loses the position. That is Kevin Sigge up in a 7th position. Bagnall down into 8th. Sigge getting the job done into turn 1, trying to hold it through the first few sectors of the few corners, of the opening sector. Bagnall sticking to the rear of that red line machine, but not enough to find a way back past again. Kevin Sigge up in a 7th, a very, very robust overtaking manoeuvre. And look at Artie Camera there with a 5-second time penalty against his name. That is for a transgression during qualification, so Camera will serve that 5-second time penalty during his mandatory pit stop, and that will put Nils Naujoks very firmly in a position to make his way past his BMW teammate.
Yeah, we're yet to find out of the incidents that happened in the early stages of the race. We'll keep you apprised of that. But that move has taken Kevin Sigge a good 15, well, let's just say the entirety of the race, the 18 and a half minutes that it's been in this race to make that move stick. It has taken him a very, very long time. Back to our championship rivals coming into this, just 5 points separated in that championship fight. You've got Tonitza, who won in the early stages of the season, took all 3 of his race wins in the first 4 races when he was battling Josh Rogers. I don't think he would have thought then he was going to be battling the McLaren of James Baldwin, who has scored points in every single race of this season so far.
Yeah, fantastic fight is forming. Of course, the Ferrari Driver Academy team are the Endurance Series champions, so David Tonitza already has an SRO championship to his name this year, but he absolutely desperately wants this Sprint Series title. This is the solo affair, just down to him, his team, his car against his rivals. And Tonitza now, the Ferrari so much quicker through the middle of the corner. Baldwin getting a little bit crossed up in the McLaren. The Ferrari looks like it can place itself much more confidently at this stage in the race, and James Baldwin is firmly in a defensive position now. Remember, Tonitza from 2nd on the grid dropped down a 3rd at the start of the race, made that position back up again, and now he is fighting for the race victory with James Baldwin. Feints to the inside, thinks better of it. Baldwin has the line covered. The Ferrari not quite as quick in a straight line as his McLaren shadow rival, so Tonitza's going to have to get this done with aggression on the brakes into one of the many deceleration zones here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. But can David Tonitza pull off the overtake? Does David Tonitza have the appetite to risk the overtake following 2 no scores? Lewis, this is going to be a fascinating fight on so many levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we are watching 2 of the very best in sim racing at the moment. Tonitza and Baldwin, superb in talent. These 2 have been separated by very little across the season. I mean, last time they were battling, there was less than a second between them, battling over the final points paying position, which went the way of James Baldwin with that 10th place finish. But look at how little separates them coming out of the chicane. I think David Tonitza knows how close he needs to be departing that final chicane, because he doesn't quite have the horsepower to draw level with the McLaren of James Baldwin. He made short work of Malinowski a bit earlier in this race, but it appears that his championship rival is a little bit trickier to overtake.
Yeah, that is really telling. Even with the aid of a slipstream, Tonitza dropping ground on that massively long start-finish straight, so he knows he's got his work cut out for him now to find a way past. Adding to the mix that the mandatory pit window will be opening in 4 minutes' time, so David Tonitza may think about a strategic call of when to come down pit road, but I'm sure the Italian driver would like to get this done out on the racetrack, not only for track position, but to put a marker down between himself and James Baldwin. Kevin Sigge continues his charge through the field as well in 7th position at the moment. That is Sam Bagnall. A bit of traffic getting out of the way, just confusing things a little bit there. Bagnall in the Porsche still glued to the rear of the red line McLaren. That is Kevin Sigge that we're looking at now, concentrating hard on the task in hand. 7th position, Yuri Petrochenko just a few yards further up the road in his own fight with Dare McCormack. So 5th and 6th position within scope of Kevin Sigge at this stage in the race. 38 minutes left on the clock in 3, 2, 1. Now, and David Tanitsa has got another very, very tidy run indeed through the final few corners of this lap. But will he have enough horsepower on that start-finish straight? That is a big question, and that's the difficult point, isn't it, for the Ferrari at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And very quickly, we'll just take a look at what has popped up on your screen there. Drive-through penalty dished out to Niels Nyox for the contact with Eamon Murphy. Oh, big over the curb. And Tanitsa's going to lose out massively there. He's just overdone it, running over the penultimate corner. And that has just messed up his run all the way through. He'll still be deep in the slipstream, and this won't fear the Italian too much, so he'll still be running strong. But that was a costly mistake at this point in the race. Drive-through penalty to Niels Nyox. I definitely can see it from either side in that one, so fair enough. Obviously, other cameras, 5-second time penalty. As you've said, Andrea Capoccia, a 5-second time penalty. That was for an incident between the 494, i.e. Capoccia, and the 89, which I do believe is Attila Dench, who's been on for a run down the order. So clearly, obviously some of the incidents, these are ones for later in the race. This is lap 4 and lap 6, those two incidents. They are still going through the first lap, making sure that they can get it absolutely right as we look backwards from Dyer McCormack towards Petrochenko, towards Kevin Sigge, who is very much knocking at the door now to pick up yet another position. Took him a long time to get past Bagnall, though. Hopefully it won't take him quite as long to get past Petrochenko.
Yep, Siggy's having a very, very strong driver in the red line car, actually picking drivers off methodically, slowly but surely, making sure that when he makes that overtake, it's good, it's clean, and it's fair. It is so easy to make contact with your rivals. It's a 60-minute race. These might be GT cars, but in a 60-minute race, you have to drive them like a touring car. You have to get your elbows out, and you attach some damage to your car early in the race. You've got to carry that damage. You've got to carry that time loss the way through to the checkered flag. So good driving by Kevin Sigge to make sure that what he does fairly, he does smoothly, and he does it right. Just like Kevin Sigge would become accustomed to, a very fair, a very fast, and a very competitive driver. And so far, that 7th position is a strong one indeed. And if I was Yuri Petrochenko, I would start to be getting very concerned indeed about the red and black McLaren behind me, because I think if Sigge can clear these two cars, he's going to be way up the road, and the next man on the list will be Malinowski, currently in a very bored 4th position.
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly, Malinowski's just been able to do whatever he wants, unfortunately, at the moment. I think Sigge wasn't quite quick enough out of the penultimate corner and out of the final corner, but he was super close to making a move down into turn 1. Look at that from camera, though. Or was that Nyox? No, it was camera diving it down inside. It's just lap traffic they're going through. I was panicking there as if he was going for a move, but still quite a way off the next position target for him. There is Malinowski, fair way off the back of Tauscher, back to Sigge. Still no move on Petrochenko. He was really close to making that stick at turn 1. Had he not lost too much time at the final corner, that move would have been on. 35 minutes left to go in the race. The pit window is now open.
Fantastic stuff. So let's see if anybody decides to get themselves out of whatever battle they find themselves in and jump down pit road nice and early. One of these 4 drivers may well be a good candidate for that exact strategy. Take themselves out of the equation of the fight, try and find themselves a little bit of free air and push to the maximum potential of their car. But Kevin Sigge will be hoping against hope that both of these cars disappear. Petrochenko recognises the threat from the behind, looks to the inside, trying to pressure McCormack, trying to cover off Sigge as well in the same move. Petrochenko snatches a break in the middle of the corner. That compromises corner exit. This is an opportunity now for Kevin Sigge. He has got to be millimetre perfect through these final turns, staying as close as he possibly can to the rear of the number 26 Porsche ahead. Sigge knows he's got a very aerodynamically friendly McLaren 720S underneath him. He could cut through the air through that final start-finish straight nicely, but he likes to go down pit lane. So Sigge, the first of our front runners to pull the trigger, jumps down pit road early, looks for the undercut.
Yeah, I was wondering whether someone in that group was going to pit early just to get out of traffic. Obviously, Niox has come through to serve what will potentially be his drive-through first and his pit stop afterwards, just to get into some form of clean air, which is not being afforded to David Tanitsa at the moment because he's still stuck behind James Baldwin, but has reclosed that gap once more, and Tanitsa just applying the pressure once again onto the shoulders of James Baldwin, his championship rival. Still no move as we run back to Rabiti against Romanenko, just outside of the top 15. All these drivers though, if they pick their right time to do pit stops, as Eamon Murphy, Angus Fender, Capoccia, Luca Lozio are all in the pit lane, if they pick the right time, they can make so much progress around the circuit. If you just get in clean air at the right place, it really does. Really helps around here more so than most other tracks.
But we've seen this so many times, Lewis, haven't we, this season? You do it right, you get clean air, you've got a big advantage. You do it wrong, you come out in traffic that's not as fast as you're able to go, and that can cost you so dearly indeed. And James Baldwin, David Tanitsa, 1 and 2, they'll be keen to stop at the same time, mirror each other, try and get it done out on the racetrack. And question for you, Lewis McGlade, David Tanitsa apparently appears to be the faster of these two drivers, these two cars at this moment in time. How much damage to his tyres is he doing following that McLaren for so many laps? Around a track as well that's got quite a high tyre degradation as well.
It is fairly high on the tyre wear, but if he's driving within himself, I know it sounds kind of a bit odd because obviously you can see how much he's throwing it around, but if he's driving within himself, if he's not overdoing the tyres, then actually it's not too bad. But if I were him, knowing that I'm quicker than the car ahead, I'd be bailing for the pit lane. I'd be heading for the pit lane. I mean, you're saying they're obviously pitting at the same time, and I get that. You want to mirror your rival. You don't want to come out in traffic, because you can go from hero to zero very, very quickly indeed. But for Tanitsa, if he knows he's faster than Baldwin, if he can make the most of it, if he can maybe get a bit lucky with where he comes out, that could be the race lead in pitting a lap or two early. It could work for him based on the fact of how much faster he's been, in the sense that he's always been able to close this gap back up to James Baldwin. This could also be Baldwin driving well within himself, keeping his tyres in check as Romanenko skipped over T1 and Rabiti's getting Gerardis down the inside, and that Aston Martin picking up a position. There might have been a little bit of contact between the two of them, and dropping back down the order is Rabiti.
Nice bit of driving further down the running order, and make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen at home as well, when we're talking about who's going to pull the trigger first at the front of the grid, people like Stefano or Amos Larito will be on the pit wall for Ferrari, crunching the numbers, working out if you come in now, where will you rejoin the racetrack in terms of your rivals. They'll be looking for that gap. They'll be instructing David Tanitsa exactly what to do and when to do it. As Yuri Petrochenko now on the charge again. Dan McCormack is the man that has been under pressure for a lot of this race in the Williams eSport car. 5th position, good qualifying, good start, good first stint to the race for McCormack in that Mercedes, but does he have the chops to stay ahead of Petrochenko and Sam Bagnall behind? Nils Naujoks, as Lewis mentioned earlier, has been down pit lane as well, so he's taken himself out of this little fight. And McCormack trying to break the toe down the start-finish straight, weaving one way and the other. That's legal. That is not defending position. That is just trying to break the slipstream. It's not necessarily polite to do that one, but it is within the letter of the law. And Yuri Petrochenko now has McCormack flustered, I think, as Bonascorsi comes down pit lane in 13th.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's just very, very aggressive from McCormack. He's dropped off the rear end of Malinovsky and not able to really get there, as we've got plenty of battles as we approach the pit stop. There is Robbie Stableford trying to make a move. Well, this is lap traffic, I believe it might well be. Oh, no, sorry, Nick Hoban, who's dropped back behind Charlie Crossland. So Crossland's made the position. And Robbie Stableford's trying to go around the outside, the stapler at T4. That could be a great move if he's able to do it. No, he cannot. He drops back in line behind Nick Hoban, who's dropped one position, nearly drops another one as he looks back to the inside to try and dive one in there. I mean, I don't think Stableford would have been too impressed after he was sent off a little bit earlier in the race by Eamon Murphy, but either way, still trying to march back up inside the points. The championship battle, this genuinely could not be much tighter at this point. Absolutely fantastic.
And that's a nice little bit of driving there from Robbie Stableford. Very clean, gave each other racing room, trying to run around the outside, which rarely Works, good effort from Robbie Stapleford. Dropped down to 18th in the early stages of the race with contact in the early stages. And there we go again. Stapleford looking around the outside once again. No room there. Flash of the lights on the McLaren. He needs Nicholas Oberg out of his way. He wants to make I can't get that car right. The Audi, Paul, they've been in racing forever. Audi, he cannot make the Audi make any mistakes. Hoban, not born yesterday, knows what he's doing, but Robbie Stapleford, very aggressive and very quick, jumps down pit road, gets himself out of the fight.
Yeah, a smart move, again, trying to use the electric pace he's got. With there being sort of 3 minutes 30 seconds left to go in this, they're 1 minute 40 second lap time, so there is one final chance for David Tunitsa to undercut James Baldwin should he pit on this time, because they could go for another couple of laps possible, although I do say never trust a commentator's maths. But either way, they can pit either this lap or one after. So it's still fairly open, although I do get the feeling that they're just going to push it to the very limit of the pit window, purely to make sure they're not going to be in traffic, which we can see quite a few teams and drivers have been in. Eamon Murphy on his rise back up the orders, now stuck behind Gerardis after his issues, or still hasn't been contacted by race control to pay for his earlier crimes, should race control see fit that Eamon Murphy was the lead contributor in those.
Yeah, Murphy having a solid recovery drive, looks nice early down the inside, doesn't have enough room. Gerardis got the line covered, got the braking covered as well, and Murphy 20th position on the racetrack. Likely he'll move up at least a couple more positions when the pit stop window and everybody shuffles themselves back into track position again after making their stop. 2 minutes 17 seconds left on the clock. There is David Tunitsa crossing over the pit line again, so both Tunitsa and James Baldwin will be stopping at the same time. They're allowing this fight to go down to what happens on the racetrack, which for us as commentators and for you folks at home is exactly what we wanted to see, as Tauscher jumps down pit lane now. So McCormack stays out, moves up in a 4th position. Malinowski moves up in a 3rd. Petrochenko into 5th, and Artie Camera goes into pit lane and will be serving his 5-second penalty as well. So likely will drop outside of the points paying positions.
We'll say with Tunitsa right now is obviously he sat behind James Baldwin. Now, whether he's got straight line speed or not, we don't fully know, because he could. I mean, this is a bold call, because if he's not confident that he could make the move anyway, he could be saving fuel a little bit, which, yeah, sure, they're all going to be able to get to the end of the race. But by saving a little bit of fuel, what you end up doing is shrinking your pit stop time, even though it's not going to be that long anyway. They come in there, their requirement is literally 1 litre of fuel. Some might take a little bit more, but either way, not 100% sure where they're going with their strategy. Tunitsa, he might be confident that he can jump in the pit lane. If not, they're just going to do it out on track, and we'll have to wait and see as we focus back towards Bagnall and Siggy, who have switched over once more. These two will be pitting this time by Baldwin, Tunitsa. Are they going to come out in that order, though?
Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistakes about it. This is one of the pivotal moments of this 2021 SRO Esports Europe Sprint Series Championship. The 2 championship protagonists, David Tunitsa, championship leader, James Baldwin, 2nd position, come down pit road from 1 and 2. As one, they're going to hit the pit stop speed limit sign, put that pit lane speed limiter on, make sure you don't make contact with each other. And now it is a case of who can hit their markers best, who can get that car started back up and off of pit road the quickest. David Tunitsa comes in from 2nd. James Baldwin comes in from the race lead. Tunitsa's box is earlier down the pit lane, so he'll get his work over and done with first. Back up to the pit lane speed limit. Baldwin has still not hit his pit box. There we go now, just behind the timing tower, so that's an inconvenient position to say the least. But David Tunitsa trundle along at the slowest speed now. Does he have the overlap? Baldwin late as it can be. They came in separated by nothing. They go out separated by nothing.
Yeah, that was very tight indeed, and they're going to go out back in that same order, which is going to be interesting for sure. Whether Baldwin's going to be able to hang on, whether Tunitsa finds something more, or whether he's going to make something special in the midway point of the lap. Kevin Siggy took 19 minutes to try and get past Bagnall in the early stage of the race. I think he's going to try and make shorter work, as you can see coming out of the lap. That was Petrochenko, who's just on the pit lane exit at the moment as Siggy's around the outside of Bagnall's superb move. There's going to be a little bit of contact, pushes Bagnall off into the grass. Oh, it's going to be super tight going around T3. Bagnall still on the inside. Siggy's trying to make it go all the way round. He's going to pick up the slipstream of Petrochenko. I'm not sure if this is going to work from Siggy because he's got to fire it in at T4. Bagnall might well just hang on here once more.
Wim bam bam, fantastic driving from these two. Kevin Siggy is not giving up on this one yet. Be careful, hanging the nose down the inside, but luckily for him, Sam Bagnall recognises the threat and gives him racing room, and Kevin Siggy took him 5 corners to get it done, but he has got that overtaking manoeuvre, and Sam Bagnall down into 8th, Kevin Siggy into 7th, Yuri Petrochenko fresh from the pit lane alongside Dale McCormack in 5th and 6th. Now Siggy will have warmer tyres than those 2 cars ahead of him, courtesy of having stopped a little earlier in the race. So now Petrochenko has got to do everything he can to find the grip again, get used to the car again in these conditions, get the pressure, get the temperature back into his tyres to fend off the team red line number 11 McLaren that we're looking at on our screen now. And Kevin Siggy, perseverance pays off, ladies and gentlemen. If you want something enough and you work hard enough, you will get it, and Kevin Siggy's 7th position is testament to that statement.
Yeah, now he needs to make short work of Petrochenko, which he nearly did there going through the final chicane, but that switchback just hasn't worked in favour of Siggy, and now he's going to be kind of not quite fast enough, I think, on the straight. That said, the Porsche is a little bit slower, and there we go. Now it starts to spool up, and Kevin Siggy for Team Redline in that McLaren should be down the inside at T1, and Petrochenko drops the position. He's going to fire it in hard, though. Oh, they're going to be super close, and Petrochenko's going to hang on.
Wow, that is brave stuff from Yuri Petrochenko. Maybe a little bit too brave, though, because Kevin Siggy has got the run through turn 3. He's keeping the car a little bit more to the inside, hoping to find a way up the inside into the next braking zone. Petrochenko has the line covered. Sam Bagnall behind is watching all this unfold. Best seats in the house. Bagnall fancies his chances of picking up some pieces that are inevitably going to be dropped as these two continue at it. And meanwhile, McCormack ahead of this fight is thanking his lucky stars. He's managed to pull out a plus 1 second gap over this squabbling trio of cars.
This is just absolutely electric from start to finish in this race. There's more things appearing on the screen. Drive-through penalty for car number 3 as Kevin Siggy's trying to go around the outside, going up the hill at turn 9, nearly getting the cut back on Petrochenko. No way to do so. Lozio, by the way, the one with that drive-through penalty. So he'll have to come back into the pit lane fairly swiftly. A warning to 64 as well. Race controller getting on top of it, but we're getting on top of the action, and Siggy, 3 corners to go in the lap. That could be a superb move all the way around the outside of the right hand. They're going to do it once more, but he'll have the inside for the chicane if he can make this one stick. He's pushed over onto the sausage curb. He's still slightly down the inside. They're going to be so close to contact, and Petrochenko somehow is still going to hang on from Kevin Siggy. However, you get a feeling this is going to come to a swift end momentarily as we head back onto the start-finish straight. That Porsche's just not going to be quick enough against the mighty McLaren on the run down into turn 1. However, on the brakes, Petrochenko might fight back.
Fantastic stuff. Siggy to the inside now, has the overlap on Petrochenko. Petrochenko can't get the car to the inside soon enough. Sam Bagnall trying to pick up some pieces as well, just a little bit further behind in that bright green Porsche. And Kevin Siggy, after all of the drama over the last couple of laps, makes a rather mundane overtaking manoeuvre into T1 to secure that 6th position. Bravo to Kevin Siggy. Congratulations to Yuri Petrochenko for holding on as long as he did in what is clearly a car not the match of those around him. Some really impressive driving from these 3, and Sam Bagnall played the waiting game, waited for an opportunity that did not come, and now Sam Bagnall needs to push hard in that number 46. Otherwise, Kevin Siggy, I fear, is going to be off and down the road and after McCormack ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, your top 5 at the moment being Baldwin, Tanitsa, obviously those two are separated by nothing. Malinovsky and Tauscher separated by nothing. You've got McCormack, who's just driving around by himself, and then that train with Siggy, Petrochenko and Bagnall, who are all separated by, again, nothing. Cameron Hoban separated by nothing. This race is super tight up and down the order. These two, I believe, have switched. Malinowski, obviously, they started this order in comparison to each other. I think at some point over the early stage of the race, Tauscher did get ahead of Malinowski post pit stops. That has switched around once more. Malinowski on the podium positions, the highest placed Porsche, of course, and they're all going to battle it out for it at the moment. I mean, I've got to say, that battle for the race lead, it has once again got close. Under half a second between Baldwin and Tinitza, and Tinitza's just not fast enough on the straights. We've covered that one off. We've ticked it off. We've seen him get close, though, in the midpoint of the lap. We've seen him look. We've seen him try and dive going down into turn 5 and even into 6 and 7. He's made some bold looks. When does he commit to one of those? Because it's kind of now or never.
And that's exactly right. Tinitza has got to take this one by the scruff of the neck if he's got any ambition to take the race victory and extend that championship lead. He cannot, frankly, afford to give away points to James Baldwin. If, as you say, positions stay as they are, that is going to be from championship leader into second position heading into the final race of the season. Yes, we're only talking 3 or 4 points. They're not big amounts of points, but any advantage at this level you give to your rivals is an advantage you cannot afford to give away. And David Tinitza so close to James Baldwin, so close for the duration of this race to James Baldwin. He has got to dig deep into his experience, skill set, and find a way past it. Interestingly, Lewis, we've not seen a particularly aggressive side to David Tinitza this season, and for me, that's going to be very, very interesting to see if he's going to play the long game and bank the points, or if he's willing to risk it all for that race victory.
I mean, I actually don't know. We saw that go missing at I remember back to Zandvoort when didn't qualify so well. Obviously, that was when he was battling with Josh Rogers for the championship. Qualified, I think, 8th or 9th position. Only got up to 7th. In that race, just didn't have the raw aggression. Zandvoort's very hard to overtake at, so we'll give him plaudits for that one as we'll focus on this battle between Tauscher and Malinowski. Tinitza needs to find that killer instinct. I know that sounds a bit ridiculous for someone who is genuinely at the tippy top of the sim racing esports world, of course, racing over in F1 esports, racing here, racing in a whole multitude of sim racing at the very, very top. Is a driver that is a recognisable superstar in sim racing terms, but still, he's in that position because he's very, very fast and knows when to take risks. And now is kind of the time to take risks. If they finish where they're finishing, just to remind you, if they finish in the order they're finishing, James Baldwin will go into the final round of the championship with 3 points, a championship lead. It is as tight as could possibly be after 10 rounds of frantic racing. And that's the kind of margin that you don't want. If it switches around, if Tinitza can get ahead, well, he will lead by an awful lot more. It would be 13 points, I think it is. Don't trust the commentator's maths. But it would be a large margin that Tinitza would lead by should he be able to get through.
And that, if you're David Tinitza, if you're the Ferrari Driver Academy team, is a tantalising prospect. You've gone from the back foot to very, very much on the front foot if you take this race victory. But to put a bit of context into this battle that we're watching at for everybody at home that maybe hasn't followed this championship as closely as Lewis and I, David Tinitza's coming off the back of a very poor run of form / luck. The last 2 races, no points. The race prior to that one, just 3rd on the grid. So Tinitza needs to stop the rot. He needs to turn the tide into a positive forward momentum. Whereas you look at James Baldwin, yes, finished 10th last time out, but the man he beat for that final point, that's right. Tinitza, prior to that one, he's had a 2nd, a 1st, a 1st, a 4th. Baldwin on form. David Tinitza has a point to prove, and that is all. Those are the little things, Lewis, aren't they? Those are the little things that make all the difference in a mindset, a psyche of a driver when you're looking to line up an overtaking manoeuvre. In his back of his mind, Tinitza's thinking, I really need this position and I really need a good result. Baldwin's thinking, I'm on top of the world and I can take anybody.
Well, they're probably actually, realistically speaking, they're actually probably kind of in a very, well, they're all battling for the championship. They're in a very similar boat, which is when you're battling for a championship, it's always going through your mind. I'm battling for this championship. It's always cool. They all play it off as being super cool again. Oh no, I wasn't thinking about the championship. I was just thinking about the race with rubbish. When you're in this position, all that's going through your mind is, how much do I want this championship? You want it bad. You've put a lot of work into making this championship happen. You want to be the European Sprint Championship champion. You obviously want, of course, it's a title we're all racing for in this. And so that's what kind of makes you find that second win, that extra little tenth, that little bit of defence, the resilience that is required to deal with a situation like this from either side, whether it's from Tinitsa trying to attack, the ability to just find that extra little bit of attack, that brave move that we're not really expecting to see. From Baldwin, that resilience to defend, to constantly keep his eye on his mirror and drive the most perfect race that you could possibly drive. It is so hard to do, and we're seeing two drivers do it for an hour perfectly. So far.
It is. I mean, it's so easy, isn't it, as a spectator at home to think, oh, it's just guys on the computer driving racing cars, but the level is so incredible. Eamon Murphy actually now recovering from some drama early, dropped all the way down to 22nd position, 15th at the moment, but Gerardis on the outside, Murphy on the inside. Is this 14th position for Yazzie McLaren? Yes, it is. Thank you very much. That turn one again, that overtaking manoeuvre, following that long straight. Eamon Murphy up another position. Now Hillebrand in 13th place, having another very nice day indeed. Thank you very much. In the Honda NSX GT3 is the next man on the list as David Tinitsa starts to charge. Michael Tauscher in 4th position, fancies his chances against Maciej Malinowski as well. Malinowski having a good race this time and a good race last time as well. Malinowski finding a rich vein of form as the season draws to its conclusion. Can the Unicorns of Love car that we're riding on board with now, that is Michael Tauscher in the picture-in-picture, concentrating, got his racing gloves on, got a nice looking racing steering wheel as well there and a widescreen monitor, focused on the task in hand. Can Tauscher for Unicorns of Love find that third position once again? Will Malinowski hold on to the position? Can James Baldwin keep that 0.2 of a second gap to David Tinitsa? And can Kevin Siggy continue his charge forward? 12 minutes, 35 seconds left on the clock. And Lewis McGlade, we have got plenty of stories yet to conclude.
Yeah, and we've got some, obviously, from the early stage of the race that we haven't even seen the finish of. Race control, throwback 50 minutes, by the way, for anyone who was joining us for that one. This is how long it's taken them to get through it, along with keeping up to date with all of the other incidents and stuff. They're regarding it as a racing incident, which I don't necessarily disagree with, based on the fact that they were all three wide. They all kind of came together. Eamon Murphy was in the middle of all of it, of course. De Salvo was sent off, but you also had Tauscher that was in there. It was all very complicated, it was all messy. It just kind of all came together. So yeah, that's regarded as a racing incident, as just kind of a lot of clumsiness. I'm sure the racing drivers will take a little bit of a slap on the wrist afterwards from race control, saying there's only one more round left to go, can we please not do that again?
And that's a good shout, I think. It's lap one. It's a track where everybody's fighting for position into the first few corners. The grid is so tightly compacted in terms of time, talent, and the cars as well, so evenly balanced that these things, they do happen, unfortunately. And as you say, when everybody's so closely compacted, as Yuri Petrochenko goes for a bit of sideways action behind the back of Kevin Siggy, when the field is so tightly compacted, you can't afford to give any quarter given or taken, and contact is made. Many cars involved, but that is that now. We're at 11 minutes 13 seconds left on the clock. Yuri Petrochenko fancies his chances against Kevin Siggy. We talked about Siggy many times this race as the man on the charge, but Petrochenko seems to have picked up one or two little tips when following the rear of the red line car, and now fancies his chances at getting back on an even keel.
Well, I mean, Siggy at the moment, his goal, we were kind of talking about him maybe being a championship protagonist at one point after scoring a few podiums, 3 podiums on the bounce. Was looking pretty consistent. In the same vein as Tinitsa, hasn't scored points in the last 2 races. Is looking to challenge, though, for third in the championship. And who's he battling for that? 2-time race winner, Niels Nyox, who is not inside the points, down in 21st position now is Nyox after that drive-through penalty. And so Siggy scoring the points that he would be doing for 6th place, which is 8 points, would overhaul Nyox by 4 points. There's only 4 points that separate them at the moment, so that'll be a nice tight fight heading into that last round of the championship, at least for third as well as for our championship fight. So it's all over the place.
So what we're saying then, barring something really wild happening in the next 10 minutes, and hey, that's been known to happen, going into the final round of the season, we've got a really stonking fight for first, second, third and 4th in the championship standings. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. Make sure you put a date in your diary for round 10, Spa-Francorchamps, so anything can happen on the 12th of November. That is going to be a sensational way to end this season. But let's not look too far ahead, because we've still got the little matter of wrapping up here at round 9 at Barcelona, the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, and still David Tinitza cannot find a way past. James Baldwin is soaking this pressure up like somebody soaks up soup with a slice of bread. He is not concerned whatsoever about David Tinitza, and Tinitza has got to find something very special indeed to get into this race lead.
Yeah, this is, like you say, it can't be the standard move. We kind of worked this out in the first stint of the race, that the straight line speed of the FDA Esports car that is presently being driven by Tinitza just isn't punchy enough on the straights. It was able to get by Malinovsky earlier on in the race, no problem. It's Porsche. It was easy to pass it down into turn 1. The McLaren of Baldwin is a different story. I mean, look at how much Baldwin pulled out on lap 1 going down into turn 1. He was able to pull a decent gap, and that was whilst everyone was in his slipstream, as we'll see Siros with dropping a position to Niox, who cut straight in front, and Rabiti nearly found his way through. You've got Remenenko in the Lamborghini just on the rear end of this train as well, so a nice little fight here just at the back end of the top 20. But where does Tinitza make a move? It has to be somewhere in the midpoint of the lap. The problem is that now that, of course, Baldwin's kind of knows that he's faster in a straight line, he knows that at this point, if he nails, like if he's just driving clean for most of the lap where it's quite hard to overtake, as long as he's nailing the final chicane, he's sorted. And that's basically the entirety of the lap for him right now, is just making sure that that final chicane is done every single lap completely perfectly. The rest of the lap can be sort of all right, as long as that Ferrari's at bay.
Yeah, very much so. James Baldwin is the man in control of this fight at this moment in time. And Ferrari will be so frustrated at the lack of straight line speed. It is a quick car over the course of a lap. It's a quick car over the course of a race stream, but it does not have the legs on that McLaren Shadow machine. As we see now, race control messages. Incident on lap 22 involving car 420 and 475. No further action necessary. That is Bonacorsi and Eamon Murphy. An incident on lap 4 in car evolving. There you go. Car number 420 again. And car number 81. No further action. Car number 81 being Robbie Stapleford. And of course, Eamon Murphy in the 420 machine. So Eamon Murphy still has a lot of work to do in 14th position, but there will be no sanctions coming his way for those two incidents at least.
I think Eamon Murphy is a lucky boy to hop away with that one. I mean, I disagree with the one against Robbie Stapleford, but like I say, it is what it is. It happened. Race control, they have got far more angles than we have to look at it. They can look at it from wherever they want. They can judge whether they were side by side enough by the rules, and they can see how everything was. They rate it as a racing incident. It is what it is, and they will move on. Robbie Stapleford's just on the cusp of the points, and at least from his day, it's not been the worst one known to mankind. So there's been some recovery there, but I would say that Eamon Murphy was pretty lucky.
Yep, I would absolutely agree. And here is Robbie Stapleford now for the Rocket Sim Sport number 81 machine. That is Nick Hoban just ahead of him. So Stapleford, that is car. Nick Hoban's car there is the one thing separating Robbie Stapleford from a points-paying position, and he'll be hungry to find a way past. We know already, courtesy of James Baldwin in the race lead, that McLaren 720S GT3 is very rapid indeed. Thank you very much. In a straight line, so Stapleford will be holding our hope he can get a good run through the final sector 9. Is to watch his braking zone, make sure he catches the apexes, make sure he gets a good launch from the corners, and that will line him up very nicely on the Audi ahead. And Stapleford starting to be a bit frustrated, getting angry, getting aggressive in the middle of the corner, but he'll know what is needed. An incident on lap 24 involving cars 31 and 48, a drive through penalty for car 31 for avoidable contact. That is George Simoas in the Aston Martin for TF Racing. So shame there, drive through penalty, making the day much harder indeed. But let's go back to Robbie Stapleford now, fighting for the points. Does he have the run on the Audi R8 LMS GT3? Not enough of a close start from the back glass corner, goes into the slipstream. Will he look to the inside? Yeah, just shows his nose a little bit. That's never really on, and Stapleford will have to recharge and reconfigure for a fight in another part of the racetrack.
Let's see where Stapleford can make the move on Holborn. Holborn, though's done well to defend so far and has battled kind of always within the top 10, so has known how to fight with him. I mean, we've seen this from Nick Holborn before. Obviously, you've got plenty of experience in racing. The Audi there looked pretty quick in a straight line, which then means that it needs to be something aggressive. Same, actually, kind of copy and paste this to the Baldwin-Tanitsa battle. It needs to be aggressive in the midpoint of the lap, where it's so difficult to pass. And no disrespect to Stapleford, that does take a lot of experience to know when and where is the right time, because it's so easy to dive down the inside and make a complete mess of it.
Yeah, and we spoke about that at the top of the show, didn't we? That if you're going to make a move in this championship against this quality field of drivers, you've got to be committed. You've got to know you have a reasonable chance of success. Half measures will be punished in the most spectacular way possible in a championship like this one. This is McCormack now doing good work in 5th position. He's caught all the way up to the back of Michael Tauscher in P4. So McCormack has found a late stint of peace in that Williams Esports Mercedes AMG, a run-and-go car, very fast in a straight line, recognised immediately by Tauscher, who goes very early to the inside to defend, but McCormack around the outside has the overlap, but in a suboptimal part of the racetrack. He tries to run it around the outside. Tauscher gives him racing room as well, but Tauscher just about keeps the position from McCormack. Then we're looking at McCormack in the picture-in-picture. Will try and get the car back to the inside, which he does successfully for the next braking zone. Tauscher late as you want on the defensive, but McCormack not giving in. Dan McCormack using all the bravery and a little bit more as well, and Michael Tauscher tries every aggressive trick in the book. McCormack is superb in that manoeuvre, and his reward is 4th position. That, Lewis, was some spectacular driving from those two.
Yeah, we've seen some great driving from McCormack before over Sro Esports in general. For Williams, is such a good driver. Is McCormack definitely one to keep your eye on, and that was a superb move. The Porsches are starting to lose their tyres, and what I mean by that is, yes, 2 minutes 30 seconds left to race, only a couple of laps, but is Malinowski out of reach? I don't really think so. Someone who I think is out of reach is James Baldwin, who is now 1.3 seconds clear of David Tanitsa at the front of the grid. So clearly some gaps are being made, as we've also had drive-through penalties applied to car 109. That one being Angus Fender receiving a drive-through penalty for the BS competition car, and Simon Rabiti as well has picked up one in the Audi just a little bit further down the order in the number 64 car. So 2 drive-through penalties coming through pretty quick, as Robbie Stapleford is still trying to get past Nick Holborn.
And Stapleford, as we said, as you said actually, Lewis, it's a lot of experience is required to know where to make the overtake, and Stapleford has the pace, it seems, in this Rocket Sim Sport McLaren, but is not looking at the right parts of the racetrack, and that is something that Holborn is using to his advantage to stay ahead down this long back straight into the first corner here at Barcelona. And so far Stapleford's running out of opportunities now, as we're looking at Eamon Murphy in 14th position. Can that become 13th place by the time we get into T1? He's going very late to the outside, using all the racetrack and more. He wants to keep the car around the outside so it becomes the inside for the left-handers, keeping the car loose, hanging it up the inside. Oh dear, Eamon Murphy has tried that several times. It's never worked to his favour, and that was very fortunate indeed, because Hildebrand could very quickly have been facing the wrong direction. Eamon Murphy needs to take a relaxation pill, I think, in his overtaking manoeuvres, because that was never going to work.
Yeah, that was, I mean, like I say, it's a bit copy and paste a bit earlier, although Wheels was a bit further alongside. So, I mean, they're racing just very hard. I'm sure should anything have happened, it would have been a racing incident anyway. But Hildebrand, will say Hildebrand's doing, I think, really quite well at the moment. Qualified a bit further down the order, has moved up quite a bit in the first couple of laps, but we know the Honda's not ideal around here, but where else can you see a Honda on the tower? Yeah, right. Hildebrand's up in 13. I think he's doing really well today.
Yeah, he is. Very solid result. We often say this, and I'm sure everybody knows now that's watched more than one race that I'm a big fan of the Honda NSX, and it's great to see it in a reasonably respectable position. Eamon Murphy late on the brakes, almost collects the back of the 111 Aston Martin, and now again that favoured outside line just showing the nose of the McLaren, trying to pressure the car ahead, but Murphy needs to calm down a little bit, needs to be a bit more circumspect in his overtaking manoeuvres, otherwise he could very quickly find himself under the eye of the stewards once again as the clock hits 0. So we are on the final lap of round 9 of the SRO Esports Europe Sprint Series.
Yeah, and the battle at the front has calmed down somewhat as Baldwin has pulled out a decent gap. He's about halfway round this lap, looking to take victory as Eamon Murphy is looking to get past Gerardis. Back up into 14th position. He wants to go. He was a bit disappointed to be dropped back down in order, but he's going to go around the outside of T1 again. This time, definitely not alongside and will not gain that position, unfortunately. There is James Baldwin. He has taken 2 race wins. If he does this one, if he completes it, it'll be 3, which means that it's 3 apiece between him and Tanitsa, and there will be very few points between them in the championship fight heading into that last round.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. David Danitza clearly now has given up his ambition of taking the race victory, but take nothing away from this man, James Baldwin. Pole position, soaked up pressure for the duration of the race. He rounds now the final corner here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. James Baldwin from McLaren Shadow takes the checkered flag. Race victory and 25 points on the championship lead. James Baldwin, a fantastic performance. David Tanitsa crosses the line in second place, and in third position Maciej Malinowski round the final corner. Dermakonite just runs out of time. Our podium drivers have performed incredibly well here at Barcelona. Petrochenko in 7th position, just behind Kevin Sigley. Sam Bagnall will cross the line in 8th. Artie Camera does well in position 9 despite that 5-second penalty carried into the start of this race, and Nick Hoban just about hangs on for the final points playing position. And I will say this now, Lewis McGlade, that was 60 minutes of pure sporting class.
And we've got 60 more minutes to go as well when we go racing that final round, which, by the way, I did say, I always say this, there's certain rules in sim racing. Don't trust, don't hit your teammate, any of that kind of stuff. Don't ever trust a commentator's maths. And I said it was 3 points, so it's actually 2 points between the top 2 in the championship. So it's pretty tight. 22nd are going to battle really close towards the line as Saknis and Nikolai Latovsky are going to battle it really, really close to the line. The battles have been coming in thick and fast throughout the entirety of the day, no matter where you've been on the grid, and it's been fast and frantic. This is going to be a pretty close one as well between CMOS and Mabiti, 2 cars that have been into the pit lane for drive-through penalties. They were up in the top 20. Unfortunately, not going to finish inside it, but either way, the drag race to the line goes the way of CMOS.
Superb stuff all the way through the field. The fight that we saw at the front between Baldwin and Tanitsa, that just goes to show that you don't necessarily need to make an overtaking manoeuvre to have an incredibly entertaining fight. And both those drivers giving everything they've got and more. It was genuinely spectacular to watch that, Lewis, wasn't it?
It really was. I mean, a dramatic race. It's the thing, Barcelona, it's a circuit which doesn't work in all forms of cars. In GTs, though, it really does deliver. We've seen some great racing throughout the day, whether it's between the pressure cooker that we had up front, between all of the random bits of 3 wide that we saw in the middle of the racetrack. We've had plenty of drama. I think there's going to be a lot of drivers that will leave this a little bit disappointed, mostly down to how the lap 1 incident kind of went. It was all a bit crazy in the mid-pack with that incident between some of our drivers. Obviously, Eamon Murphy was involved along with DeSalvo. It was a little bit tight, a little bit frantic in there, but I mean, I think we can catch up with one of the drivers who did the work on the day, Paul.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. We are joined by our race winner from the 9th round of the SRO Esports Europe Sprint Series, James Baldwin. We've said this before, but congratulations on a fantastic race victory.
Thank you very much. I'm knackered, man. I'm done.
Yeah, that was sensational, man. I mean, from the beginning to the end, you were under such incredible pressure. Talk us through what that was like as to soak that pressure up and still deliver the performance.
Well, I mean, I didn't expect the Ferrari to be that quick. Barcelona, loads of long corners, fast corners. It's a McLaren track, although the BOP was very equal in a sense. It just took me by surprise, and then I had to reset my mind to deal with that pressure for like 50 minutes, and I'm knackered. I'm really tired, but yeah, I mean, fair play to David. That was an unbelievable drive from him. He had ridiculous pace. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was spectacular to watch it up in the commentary box, and I'm sure for everybody at home as well. Now, we have a mandatory pit stop here in SRO Esports. Talk us through your thought process in that one. Both of you left it right to the very end. Was there ever any chance of coming in and doing a different strategy to see if you could break away a little?
No, because you come out in traffic, so you just get blocked. So I actually thought he'd do something a bit different to me. I was always going to go to the end, but he copied me. But that was even more tense because I could see him in the pit lane behind me. So, like my finger on my keyboard was shaking, like so nervous. But no, I mean, does that mean I'm in the lead of the championship going into the last round?
Means you've got a 2-point lead heading into the final round. Yeah.
Oh man. Brilliant.
How do you feel about that one, speaking of the final round? It's Spa-Francorchamps, the weather can do anything, the track's wild. Have you got a good level of confidence?
Yeah, I like Spa. I mean, if it just depends on the BOP, and if it's wet, I don't know. It really depends on how the BOP is, but if it's equal, like it has been recently, it's going to be so close. But I'm ready for it. I want to win this now. I had no idea after round 3 I'd be able to win this, and somehow it's gone really well, so...
Yeah, we said that in the commentary, actually, that you're very much a man for... I mean, I know it's 10th last time out, but you beat Tanitsa to that point, where Tanitsa's on the back of a poor run of results last 2 or 3 rounds. Does that help you as a driver to have that confidence, knowing that you're very much the man with a forward progression underneath them?
Yeah, I suppose it does. I mean, you're only as good as your last result, but to be fair to David, like, he is doing F1 Esports at the same time, which, you know, yesterday he put it on pole in F1 Esports, and then today he's like that quick behind me the whole race. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's doing, and he's really obviously a very talented driver. So to be near him, let alone beat him, is pretty cool.
Yep, fantastic stuff. And final question before we let you get off and celebrate, just give our audience at home a little idea of what you'll be doing between now and the final round on the 12th of November in terms of preparation.
Practicing. Sat here and just looking at this screen a lot. That's what I'll be doing. I might have a beer tonight, and then I'll start practicing tomorrow.
Brilliant stuff, James. Fantastic, man. Congratulations on an absolutely outstanding race victory.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks very much. James Baldwin, the race winner of the 9th round of the SRO Esports Europe Sprint Series, and in the most classy style possible on and off track, Lewis McGlade, a true gentleman there, shouting out for the skill and the work that his rival Tanitsa's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I respect that, of course. I mean, there is obviously the whole ego side of it, and I've seen this before from plenty of drivers where I was like, yes, you won that race, and they was like, yeah, it's faster. Oh, good, great. Obviously, the most important thing that you can do in a championship, especially at this level of sim racing, when you're battling against the very, very best, is respect your competitor. Understand that you are battling with the very best. It means you don't underestimate them. You can see that there from Baldwin, that at no point in that race did he underestimate who was behind him. He knew that if he made one mistake, that was it. Tanitsa was getting through. It was done. It was a done deal. It would have been sorted. Tanitsa's that good. He was ready to pounce at almost every single point. Into the final round of the season, it'll just be that turned up to 11.
It will indeed, and Spa-Francorchamps, what a circuit to host that final race of the season as well. Weather often comes into play, as anybody that's watched a race at Spa-Francorchamps will know. The track is the most demanding circuit in Europe, and in these cars, it is absolutely spectacular. So, put a date in your diary. You can see it on your screen, November the 12th, same time, same place. We will be visiting the beautiful Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Myself, Paul Jeffrey, and Lewis McGlade have brought you this race. Thank you to everybody involved in this broadcast, to Pirelli, Kunos Simulazione, AK Esports, SimGrid, SRO Motorsports, AWS, Fanatec, and of course, everybody involved in bringing you this broadcast. From myself, Paul Jeffrey, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, care. Bye-bye.